The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is a remarkable event known for showing the true power of nuclear weapons. Not only did the bombings change the vision of military weapons, but set the stage for future wars and events that would set the course of history on a different path. The year was 1939, and Germany had just invaded Poland. France and Great Britain sent an ultimatum to German forces declaring that they must withdraw. Germany did not accept, and World War II began. Many countries, including the United States, would stay out of the war. While the other countries were battling, the U.S. would closely monitor what was happening. As the war went on and the years passed, everything seemed fine for the United States. No one seemed to attack or threaten them, but that all changed on one devastating day in 1941. On December 7th, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base Pearl Harbor. President Franklin D. Roosevelt came out and announced to the public that the United States had been attacked by Japan's naval and air forces. People were devastated, many lives were lost, and lots of military equipment was destroyed. The U.S. had to do something, and what they did would set Hiroshima and Nagasaki's fate in stone. They declared war on Japan. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. started the Manhattan Project. The goal of this top-secret project was to create the first nuclear bomb. Nuclear fission had been discovered years prior, but controlling this reaction was not yet possible. The U.S. achieved this, though, only months after the Manhattan Project began. They successfully controlled a nuclear reaction on December 2, 1942, at Chicago Pile 1 at the University of Chicago. For the next 4 years, it was trial and error for the scientists behind the deadly atomic bomb. They would struggle, running into problems that would become critical issues when the weapons were used in battle. On July 16, 1945, at a desert in New Mexico, the Trinity test would take place. 1 minute before detonation, the scientists would brace themselves as they were about to set off a device that could destroy the world. At 5:29 a.m., the atomic bomb, nicknamed the Gadget, dropped from the 100-foot steel tower it was placed on. The bomb reached the detonation point, and in a fraction of a second, the bomb went off. The rapid compression increased the density of the plutonium, bringing the bomb to a supercritical state. Tremendous amounts of energy were released in the form of heat and radiation. The bomb shot out of a mushroom-shaped cloud. Witnesses nearby described it as beautiful but terrifying. The bomb was a success. This power in their hands, the United States were going to attack Japan. After creating the world's first atomic bomb, the United States planned to give Japan one last chance. On July 26, 1945, the United States government issued the Potsdam Declaration. The declaration said in exact words, "We call upon the government of Japan to proclaim now the unconditional surrender of all Japanese armed forces, and to provide proper and adequate assurances of the good faith in such action. The alternative for Japan is prompt and utter destruction." Japan rejected their offer. They feared losing their emperor's status and imperial possessions. The United States gave the green light to the scientists, and this utter destruction would soon happen. It was August 6, 1945, and it was early morning when the B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay took off from Tinian Island carrying the little boy atomic bomb. The pilot, Colonel Paul Tibbets, and his team were focused, thinking that the bombing would end the war and save lives on both sides. The Enola Gay flew with 2 other planes, the Great Artiste and Necessary Evil. Both were observers, Artiste carrying an observation instrument to record the event, and the Necessary Evil taking photographs of the bombing. The atomic bomb was not fully put together during takeoff. Previous test flights with the B-29 bomber airplane were not successful. If the plane crashed with the little boy atomic bomb ready to go, it would explode, destroying everyone on Tinian Island and letting the whole world know that the atomic bomb existed. When they were ready, Captain William Parsons activated the bomb, and 30 minutes before they got to the target, the captain's assistant, Morris Jepson, put in the arming plugs. The bomb was now fully assembled and ready for detonation. The planes came into view. Air raid sirens went off, but after seeing only 3 planes, they were quickly turned off. Sadly, everyone went back to their day, but the planes continued to fly towards the target, Iowa Bridge. They were approaching. They had the target in sight. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb bay doors opened and the bomb dropped, reaching its predetermined detonation altitude of 600 meters, nearly 43 seconds after release. They missed the target by nearly 240 meters. The radar altimeter set off internal mechanisms inside the bomb that fired uranium projectiles into the target. This created the nuclear reaction, causing the devastating explosion of the atomic bomb. The explosion happened in nearly a millisecond, having the force of 15,000 kilotons of TNT, and being brighter than the sun for just a moment. People describe the explosion as a deafening boom going for miles around. The center of the explosion, about 200 meters wide, instantly killed anything it touched. Following the nuclear blast wave, 340 meters out of the detonation point, was the most devastating part. Everything in the radius was killed, and a reinforced concrete building buildings were instantly destroyed. Outward of the blast, approximately 1.7 kilometers away, fire ignited and buildings collapsed. Many fatalities occurred. Finally, there was the outer layer of the blast, going nearly 4.5 kilometers away from the explosion. This shadowed windows and injured many who looked out their window in curiosity. The radiation caused instant third-degree burns for miles out. The devastation was terrible. Many lives were lost. Japan was clueless on what had happened. The U.S. had chosen Hiroshima so that they could show off the true power of the bomb. The U.S. government offered for Japan forces to surrender. Sadly, they refused. Yet again, the U.S. would attack one of Japan's cities. Looking at the list of possible cities, they chose Kokuro. The team of scientists began building the new bomb. This time, it was bigger and better. The new bomb, named the Fat Man, was designed to have a more devastating explosion. On August 9th, just 3 days later, the B-29 bomber boxcar took off with the bomb, heading towards Kokuro, accompanied by the Enola Gay and Lagan Dragon, who both served as weather reconnaissance aircrafts. The Great Artiste and Big Stink also came along, serving as observation instruments and providing photographic evidence for the bomb. Arriving at the target, they reported that the city had been covered by a thick cloud and that there was smoke from a nearby firebombing, not allowing for them to precisely hit their target. They made 3 runs through the city. Each failed. Running low on fuel, they moved their eyes over to Nagasaki, which was their secondary target for the mission. The bomb, which was already assembled, was ready to drop. They arrived at the city yet again and positioned themselves to be directly over the target. Their primary targets were the Mitsubishi Steel and Arm Works and the Mitsubishi Urakami Torpedo Works. As before, though, the targets were covered by clouds, not allowing for them to precisely hit the factories. Due to a small opening in the clouds, though, they had eyes on one of the secondary targets, the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Armaments factory. At 11:02 a.m., the atomic bomb dropped. It detonated with a force of 21,000 kilotons of TNT, 40% greater than the explosion in Hiroshima. The damage was not as widespread as that of Hiroshima. The geographical structure and surrounding industries contained most of the damage. The explosion covered 43 square miles, 8 of those being water and 33 not being very lively. The bomb also was targeted towards the industries, not the heart of the city, which was very inhabited. Everything up to half a mile away from ground zero was instantly destroyed, humans, animals, and buildings. The second bombing led to the Emperor of Japan to force Japanese armed forces to surrender on August 10th, just a day after the bombing of Nagasaki. On August 15th, 1945, Japan's emperor broadcasted the surrender of Japan on the radio, officially declaring the fight between the U.S. and Japan over. After the bombing in Nagasaki, Japan publicly announced their unconditional surrender on August 15, 1945. Just a month later, on September 2, 1945, Japan signed the instrument of surrender while being aboard the USS Missouri. This officially ended World War II. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki also racked up a total of about 210,000 deaths after the bombing. Not long after, thousands more would die due to various cancers and sicknesses caused by the bombing. The atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki also influenced the Cold War arms race and led to multiple treaties being signed, the most important being the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 1968, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1996, and the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in 2017. Following the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the two sides of the war were split. U.S. citizens believed that the bombing was beneficial, both ending the war and saving many soldiers' lives on both sides, as 2 of the men in the bombers say it best in these interviews.
A face in the crowd at this week's anniversary ceremonies in Hiroshima and Nagasaki has been that of Jacob Biza. A radar expert, he was the only man to fly in the bombers that hit both cities.
I freely admit that on the way home from Hiroshima, I hoped that we wouldn't have to do it too often. And on the way home from Nagasaki, I was convinced in my own mind that I hope we never have to do it again. But if there had been 2 more, I'd have gone 2 more times. It was my job.
And I've been asked directly, would you do it again? If you give me the same circumstances, I would not hesitate. And I've never lost a night's sleep.
However, most people in Japan said the opposite. They believed that the bombing was too much. They said that the U.S. went too far, taking an extra step that they did not need to take. The statement from a Japanese citizen who survived the bombing says it well.
Look at the sky, something dropping. Then I pushed my eyes and ears strongly and laid down on the ground. But before that, yellow flash came out. I think this is a very cruel experiment of nuclear age.
The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were both very historical moments in world history. They were the only times ever that the atomic bombs were used in battle, marking the impossible advancement of military weapons and beginning a new dangerous age of war and life itself. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki not only showed that man can harness nuclear power, but can use it for both good and evil.